A young woman stopped in the middle of an airport. Random checks, they said, but their eyes betrayed them. They weaponized every detail: her skin, her fashion, her confidence, turning her presence into a threat. She didn't stay silent. She demanded dignity. But instead, cold metal clamped down on her wrists right there in the airport of her childhood, dragged away like a criminal. But she wasn't just anybody. And soon they'd realize the name she carried would make power itself tremble. Don't miss a second of this story. Share it, subscribe, and join us in revealing the truth the world tries to ignore. Oak Ridge International Airport was alive with its usual chaos a Tuesday afternoon in mid-June, soaked in California sunlight and humming with the energy of travel. Through towering glass panels, golden light spilled onto the marble floors where rolling suitcases clicked and echoed. Announcements buzzed through loudspeakers in multiple languages. Families reunited, tourists snapped photos, and children giggled as they chased each other across polished walkways. In the middle of it all was a young woman who couldn't be missed. Naomi Spencer, 21, had just returned from a celebratory trip across Europe, a reward she'd gifted herself after graduating with honors in art history. Her radiant honey-brown skin glowed under the warm light. Her thick black curls were swept up into a high, confident bun. She wore moss-green silk joggers, a tailored designer top, and a pair of limited edition Air Jordans that turned heads. A deep purple MCM backpack hung effortlessly over one shoulder. With her white wireless headphones in, she was dancing softly to vibrant R&B, completely immersed in her own rhythm. She moved with purpose, scanning the signs for baggage claim, eager to grab her souvenirs and run home to Oak Ridge, to her family, to her friends. But while Naomi's mind was filled with memories of museums and European cafes, someone else was watching. From a quiet corner near a security post, two officers stood observing the crowd. Officer Hank Collins, a weathered white man in his 40s with graying hair and a permanent frown carved into his sunburned face, squinted as he spotted her. His gaze darkened not with suspicion, but with prejudice. "Look at that girl, Nick," he muttered to the younger cop beside him. Black girl dressed like she's about to walk on stage. Designer backpack, fancy shoes. Where's a kid like that getting that kind of money? Officer Nick Simmons, barely 29, turned to look. He saw what Collins saw, but his mind, still green, wasn't yet filled with the same bitterness. Still, Collins' words sank in quickly. "She doesn't look like she's from around here," Simmons offered, as if that alone explained everything. Collins snorted. "I know this type. Either daddy's laundering money, or some rich boyfriend rapper or athlete keeps her dressed in gold. Either way, I bet she's hiding something." His assumptions had no basis, just prejudice, raw and unfiltered. But it was enough. Simmons, swayed by authority and eager to prove himself, nodded. "So what do we do?" Collins grinned. "We make her sweat. Let's see how clean she really is. Be ready. I'll give you the signal." And just like that, two officers decided to play judge, jury, and executioner because of how a young black woman looked after stepping off a plane. Naomi had no idea that her homecoming was about to become a nightmare. As Naomi stepped into a quieter hallway that connected to baggage claim, the two officers emerged from their hiding spot. Their sudden appearance startled her. She quickly pulled her headphones off, her body stiffening as instinct took over. "Hey girl," Officer Collins called out. His tone was casual but laced with disrespect, completely inappropriate for someone in uniform. "Where are you off to in such a hurry?" "The police have a few questions." Naomi blinked, confused and slightly uneasy. "Excuse me? I'm just going to pick up my luggage." "Luggage?" Officer Simmons repeated with a smirk, eyeing her backpack. "Why the rush? Got something in there you don't want us to see." Naomi frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I have nothing to hide. Please move." "Relax, girl," Collins said, raising a hand as if calming a skittish animal. "We just want to talk." He demanded her ID. Though unsettled, Naomi complied. She pulled her California driver's license from her bag and handed it over. Collins read it aloud. "Naomi Spencer." He raised an eyebrow. "Spencer, huh? That name sounds familiar." He looked up, scanning her face with renewed intensity. "You're from California. What brings you here? You're so young, how can you afford this kind of outfit? The flights? What do your parents do to be so rich?" His questions were invasive, accusatory, and steeped in assumptions. Naomi felt her patience slipping. You have no right to ask me those things, she said, her voice rising. What I wear and how I travel is none of your business. I've done nothing wrong. Simmons stepped in, his voice more mocking now. Oh, but you're getting loud. That must mean you're guilty of something. Pretty girl, ugly attitude. That's not a good combo. Naomi glared. If you think I'm suspicious, explain why. What exactly do you think I've done? Collins' face turned red with frustration. You look nervous. You dress flashy. That's enough. We've seen your type smuggling drugs. Could be on your body. Could be in your bags. Naomi gasped. Drugs? Are you serious? We'll find the proof, Collins said smugly. But first, because of your attitude and our suspicions, you're coming with us. He turned to Simmons. Nick, cuff her. Resisting and suspicion of narcotics possession. Simmons hesitated, but the order had been given. No, this is wrong. Naomi protested, backing away. You can't do this. You want to threaten us, Collins snapped. Who's your daddy, a rapper? A one-able lawyer? I'll sue you, Naomi yelled. My dad, he won't let this slide. But her words, rather than stopping them, only added fuel to their arrogance. Collins chuckled. Yeah, who is he? You think dropping a name is going to save you? Naomi was still speaking when Simmons moved in. In one swift motion, he twisted her arms and snapped the cold handcuffs around her wrists. She cried out in pain and disbelief. People nearby paused, watching the scene unfold. A few recorded it, but no one intervened. And in that silence, Naomi felt something break inside her, not just fear, but betrayal. In her own city, in her own airport, she was being treated like a criminal for nothing but the color of her skin. The metal door slammed shut behind her. Naomi found herself in a small, windowless security room, cold, harshly lit, and reeking of old sweat and disinfectant. Officer Collins slumped into a chair, feet up on the desk, smirking like he'd already won. Simmons stood by the door, arms crossed, silent but smug. This is what you get, Collins said, his tone dripping with mockery. Resist the police and you end up here. He warned her of criminal charges, drug possession, resisting arrest, painting a bleak future of job loss and a ruined record. Then, with a wink, he leaned in. Unless you want to make things easier. Naomi narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? Simmons chuckled. Collins got bolder. We let you go, no paperwork, no report. All it takes is a little cooperation. $5,000 should do. Naomi's heart pounded. The offer wasn't just illegal, it was disgusting. I'm not paying you. I haven't done anything wrong. Collins' smile faded. Then we'll do it the hard way. Full search, overnight stay. Your call. Naomi swallowed hard. Her fear was turning into fury. I want to make a phone call, she said, her voice steady. Collins laughed. Sure. Call your daddy or some boyfriend. See if they can save you. He pointed to the landline. Speaker on. What he didn't know was this call wasn't just for help. It was about to change everything. Naomi's fingers trembled as she dialed. The old landline crackled. Collins and Simmons leaned in, amused. Let's see which rich boy comes to the rescue, Collins muttered. The phone rang once, twice. Then hello. A deep, commanding voice. Naomi choked up. Dad, it's me. There was a pause. Then urgency, Naomi? Are you okay? No, she whispered, voice cracking. I'm in trouble. At the airport. 2 cops said I had drugs. They handcuffed me. The room fell silent. Silent. Then her father's voice erupted like thunder. What? Who did this to you? Collins and Simmons froze. The smile vanished from Collins' face. Give the phone to whoever's in charge, the voice ordered. Now. Naomi held out the receiver with shaking hands. He wants to talk to you, she told Collins quietly. Collins took the phone, still cocky. Yeah, this is Officer Collins. The roar on the other end cut him off. I am Mayor Leonard Spencer. Do you have any idea what you've done? The blood drained from Collins' face. The phone slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. Simmons backed away, pale and speechless. They had just arrested the daughter of the most powerful man in the city, and now the consequences were coming. The door to the security room burst open. Captain Laura Gaines stormed in, her face a storm of fury and disbelief. She had just received a dozen urgent calls. From the mayor's office. From the police commissioner. From the press. Collins. Simmons. Step away from her. Now. Both men looked like ghosts. Gaines rushed to Naomi, her voice shaking. Miss Spencer, are you all right? Oh my God. I'm so sorry this happened. She turned to Simmons and snapped, unlock her cuffs. Immediately. Simmons fumbled with the key. His hands shook as he freed Naomi's wrists. Red marks lined her skin. She rubbed them gently, blinking back the last of her tears. Then Collins fell to his knees. Please, Miss Spencer. We didn't know. We didn't mean to hurt you. Please talk to your father. Beg him to spare us. Simmons followed suit, collapsing beside his partner. We have families. Please, don't ruin us. But it was too late. The arrogant officers who once laughed now begged like children. And Naomi? She didn't say a word. She simply turned her eyes to Captain Gaines, silently demanding justice. Captain Gaines straightened her back. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. Enough. Your actions have disgraced this department. I am placing both of you under immediate suspension. Hand over your badges and weapons now. Collins and Simmons moved slowly, visibly trembling. They removed their badges, their sidearms, their power stripped away in seconds. Gaines turned to Naomi. You will be escorted safely. And the mayor's team is already on the way. Naomi didn't respond. She simply stood, holding her sore wrists, her expression a mask of quiet strength. Within hours, the scandal exploded. Internal Affairs opened a full investigation. News stations picked up the story. The footage from security cameras and witness statements confirmed everything. Collins and Simmons were charged with abuse of power, unlawful detention, and racial discrimination. The city was in shock. But for Naomi, the damage was already done. At the trial, neither Collins nor Simmons dared to defend their actions. Gone were the smirks, the arrogance, the fake bravado. Both men pleaded guilty. They cried, stammered, and begged the judge for leniency, claiming they had acted on impulse, that it was just a misunderstanding. But the courtroom was not a place for excuses. The evidence was damning: surveillance footage, audio recordings, eyewitness accounts, and above all, the racial undertones that ran through every word they had said, every action they had taken. The court found them guilty of abuse of power, unlawful detention, harassment, and civil rights violations with racial motivation at the core. The sentence: 3 years in federal prison for each of them. Some in the public called it too light. Others called it justice. But Naomi didn't care about the opinions of the crowd. She didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. There was no sense of closure, no joy in seeing them fall. What had happened to her had left something deeper than bruises or headlines. It left a wound that reopened every time she walked into a crowded space and saw someone look at her just a little too long. It left her wondering how many others who didn't have a powerful last name suffered the same fate in silence. But even in pain, Naomi didn't nick D. She didn't fade away or hide. She rose. Not just for herself, but for every person who ever felt voiceless, overlooked, and judged not by their character, but by their skin. In the months that followed, Naomi began to reclaim her power not through anger, but through purpose. She became a voice. A speaker. A force. What happened at the airport didn't just change her, it awakened her. She began speaking at universities, hosting workshops, and joining campaigns focused on criminal justice reform, racial bias training, and police accountability. Her story, once a private nightmare, became a public call to action. People listened. Some for the first time. The mayor's daughter had become more than a headline, she became a symbol. Not because of her name, but because she refused to be broken. Because she spoke truth to power when most would have gone silent. And because she reminded the world that dignity isn't granted by status, it's inherent to being human. The Oak Ridge Police Department, shamed and shaken, introduced mandatory anti-bias training. A new civilian oversight board was created. Quiet reforms began taking root, not because of public pressure alone, but because Naomi made sure the pressure never stopped. What started as a moment of humiliation became the spark of a movement. Naomi never asked to be an activist, but injustice gave her no choice. She would keep fighting. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she wanted change. In the months that followed, Naomi began to reclaim her power not through anger, but through purpose. She became a voice. A speaker. A force. What happened at the airport didn't just change her, it awakened her. She began speaking at universities, hosting workshops, and joining campaigns focused on criminal justice reform, racial bias training, and police accountability. Her story, once a private nightmare, became a public call to action. People listened, some for the first time. The mayor's daughter had become more than a headline, she became a symbol. Not because of her name, but because she refused to be broken. Because she spoke truth to power when most would have gone silent. And because she reminded the world that dignity isn't granted by status, it's inherent to being human. The Oak Ridge Police Department, shamed and shaken, introduced mandatory anti-bias training. A new civilian oversight board was created. Quiet reforms began taking root, not because of public pressure alone, but because Naomi made sure the pressure never stopped. What started as a moment of humiliation became the spark of a movement. Naomi never asked to be an activist, but injustice gave her no choice. She would keep fighting. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she wanted change. Weeks turned into months, and Naomi's face slowly disappeared from the headlines, but her work did not. She launched a nonprofit aimed at empowering youth of color, creating safe spaces where stories like hers could be shared and heard without fear. She used her own experience as a platform, but her mission was bigger: to ensure no one else had to endure what she did. The mayor, her father, remained supportive yet protective, haunted by the idea that even his own status couldn't shield his daughter. He funded new programs and quietly ensured that systemic changes reached every level of city law enforcement. Collins and Simmons remained in prison, their pleas for early release denied. Public sentiment was firmly against them. Even those once sympathetic had changed their views as the full weight of their actions and their consequences became clear. As for Naomi, she still carried the scars. Some nights were harder than others. But with each step forward, with each young voice she helped uplift, she felt something rebuild inside her. Her story wasn't one of tragedy, it was one of transformation. And the final chapter was still being written. The aftermath of this story didn't end at the airport that day. It lingered like a quiet scar in the hearts of those who witnessed and understood what truly happened. Weeks after the incident, the young woman who once shed tears in that cold interrogation room had quietly become a symbol of resilience. She didn't choose retaliation through anger, but through action. What happened to her didn't break her spirit. It lit a fire within. She began attending forums, speaking at community events, sharing her experience, and calling for change in how law enforcement operates. Her story spread across social media and caught the attention of civil rights organizations. People began to ask the difficult question: if the daughter of a mayor could be treated this way, what happens to ordinary citizens? She didn't want to be remembered as a victim, but as someone who turned pain into purpose. She used the injustice she faced to drive reform and protect others who might one day face the same abuse. And while the public memory of the event may fade with time, to her, it remains a sharp reminder, not just for herself, but for an entire society walking a fine line between justice and prejudice. This story teaches us that a single moment of prejudice, a glance, a doubt, a whisper of suspicion is all it takes to spark unnecessary tragedy. What's even more painful is realizing that racism doesn't always scream. It often hides behind authority, behind assumptions, behind the false belief that power gives someone the right to humiliate others without consequence. The message is clear: justice cannot thrive if we remain silent in the face of injustice. We cannot wait until someone becomes powerful or famous to be worthy of protection. Every person holds equal value and deserves to be treated with dignity and fairness. Starting today, we can begin by changing how we see others, how we act when no one's watching. We can speak up when something feels wrong. We can question the status quo. And in the next 5 years, what we do now can lay the foundation for a more just society. Will racism end by 2045? Perhaps not completely. But if we keep acting, keep speaking out, then one thing is certain: it will no longer be allowed to exist in silence. Note: this story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of raising awareness. It highlights issues of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating everyone with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose violence, prejudice, and injustice in all forms. Viewer discretion is advised.